New week, and we've got a major winter storm that is revving up in the western half of the United States, and it's revving up in places where you never would think it would be revving up. And in the meantime, it's mostly quiet and calm in the eastern half of the United States, at least for now, but we're getting ready for record high temperatures in the southeast and some winter weather that's going to be moving into the interior northeast later this week from this storm out in the west. All that and more tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. And since we didn't have much of a winter, they're getting ready for spring. They've got mulch, they've got topsoil, and just in case you do get something someday, they've got salt. 631-756-1125 is the telephone number with the best prices anywhere on Long Island and anywhere close by. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com, Joseph. Happy
Hey,
Monday.
happy Monday to you. So, Mr. Rayo, you may recall, I don't know how many weeks ago, where I sort of said, half joking but also half serious, that they would probably see snow, accumulating snow in Los Angeles, California, before they see it in New York, in New York City. And while New York City got their paltry, what was it, 4/10 of an inch at the end of January,
Yes.
the snow levels in in the areas in nearby Los Angeles in the mountains are going to drop down to as low as 1,000 feet, and they have winter storm watches up for the mountains to the east of LA and the Hollywood Hills. I was looking at their forecast. The LA forecast for later this week, where temperatures are going to be not get out of the 40s with rain and lows down in the upper 30s. So who knows? They may see some snowflakes of the natural kind, I guess, that come down from the sky in the Hollywood Hills. But I was talking about this yesterday. I really am I'm rather impressed by the setup that is setting up for the western half of the United States, and particularly for areas now up in Minnesota, for example, and Wisconsin. I think some of those areas are going to wind up with a couple of feet before this is all said and done. And I'm also looking forward to when is it? Wednesday and Thursday, Wednesday when it's going to be in the 80s here, not that far away, and record highs.
Well, tomorrow's going to be kind of I'm not going to say a grim day, but it's going to be one of those indifferent type of days. I think here in the tri-state area, an overcast sky and just some spotty and light precipitation, a little bit of drizzle, a little bit of light rain from time to time and place to place, but not all that much. And then we will clear things out, have a reasonably nice, bright day on Wednesday. And then the big question for Wednesday night is exactly what do we see? I mean, not necessarily for New York or Long Island, but here in the Hudson Valley, there's a chance we might be dealing with some sleet or freezing rain or ice for a while during the overnight hours that could make things rather slick or slippery and maybe even lead to some delayed school openings on Thursday. So that's probably about the closest we've come to some really serious winter weather all winter long.
Yeah, I think it's going to really depend, I think, on how much cold air bleeds down. Cold air is going to try to bleed down on Wednesday from the north, and sometimes the low levels anyway, not the upper levels, but the low level cold air is going to try to sink down. So yeah, I mean, I think for inland areas, it's not impossible, particularly up where you are, and Connecticut points north. And north of I-90, I think there could be a decent snowfall out of this too. But once again, you just don't have the weight of the cold air and the setup in the eastern. There's just too much ridging in the eastern part of the United States to allow that cold air to get down far enough south to cause anything serious down near the coast. And by the way, there's some kind of weak system coming through tonight into tomorrow morning. It's like a stick that's dropping southeastward. I noticed that Boston or Connecticut put up the chance that there could be some snow tonight into tomorrow morning, maybe even leaving a coating in places. Uh, this is all backwards. This is all backwards. We should be say we shouldn't even be saying what's going on in Los Angeles. That shouldn't even be or in Southern California. Not that it doesn't snow in the mountains, it does, but most times in most winters we don't really see too much of that over there, and we see a lot more of it over here. And it's just in reverse because of the way because of this perverse upper air pattern that we have been absolutely stuck in, remains unrelenting, shows no signs of changing anytime soon. It's a very, very odd winter indeed.
Very odd, yes. And according to Dr. Judah Cohen, in the latest installment of the longest running soap opera, Billions of Years, quote, as the polar vortex turns,
Yes.
the polar vortex centers become estranged, separated over Europe, but there could be an unexpected merging or reunion over East Asia, truly global or world story of romance. He's really now reaching for it now. The lack of being able to properly account for splitting of polar vortices or changing of the upper level or stratospheric patterns or whatever. And in fact, he says, I believe in today's blog, I discuss how I believe that the question is no longer will the polar vortex disruption couple with our weather, but rather when, how, widespread, and for how long. For what it's worth, latest Mrs. Ann Samble's weeklies agree with me. Blog now available for an early look, and that's in case you want to, pay for it. I personally do not want to pay for it, but he will come up with some more hints as to what he's thinking, maybe later on in the week.
The question of coupling has been the ongoing question for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I'm still leaning to the idea that it just doesn't couple down. It could be wrong. Certainly, that would not exactly be breaking news if I were, but we've seen no evidence of coupling whatsoever. So the trend is your friend, and until something really decisive, it really is going to take something truly decisive to break this pattern down, and not so much what goes on in North America, but something in the Pacific needs to happen to break this pattern down, and I don't see it. I just don't see anything there. Every once in a while, you get a run where it looks like something is there, and then it's gone. And I throw my hands up. I threw in the towel. I don't have a towel nearby. If I had one, I'd throw it. You know, the other thing, Joe, the clock is. We're at February 20th here. I mean, if nothing changes in 16 days, I mean that basically puts you at around March 6th or 7th. then it takes another week or 10 days to get everything realigned. So now we're talking about something happening after St. Patrick's Day if something were to happen, and we know what the odds are not high, not high. They're not zero, but they're not high to get something once you get past St. Patty's Day down near the coast at least.
And a final thought from Dr. Cohen. He says, my belief is that the relationship between snow and climate change is not so much climate change equals less snow, but rather that it exacerbates winners and losers, rich and poor. Case in point, impressive amount of snow predicted for the United States this week. And guess where it's going to fall? Where it
Yeah,
has snowed all winter long.
you
And guess
know,
where it's not going to snow?
right.
And guess where it's not going to snow? You got it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. Read that phrase, that statement again, the beginning part of it about the relation to climate. I think that's well put and well said.
He
It,
says, my belief is that the relationship between snow and climate change is not so much that climate change equals less snow, but rather it exacerbates winners and losers, rich and poor. Impressive amount of snow, again predicted in the United States this week. Guess where it will fall and where it has snowed all winter. And guess where the no snow area is going to be, as has been the case all this winter. So once again, the West is going to get hit. Even parts of the central states will get hit. But meanwhile, here in the East, at least we have something to work with. 4/10 of an inch of snow so far this winter season at Central Park.
right, but we should also say that north of I-90 in upstate New York and probably in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine could wind up doing fairly well with this. Maybe not as well as they're going to do in the West. And speaking of which, I mean, look at this watches and warnings map kind of says it all. When you've basically painted. A lot of times when you get storms in the West, you have to delineate between the mountains and the valleys, and you'd have winter storm warnings up, and then there'd be these gaps where you don't have any kind of warnings, or maybe you have advisories up. But we've got like wholesale. Virtually the whole state of Montana is under a winter storm warning. We have blizzard warnings in 5 of the northeastern counties of Montana. We have the whole state of Wyoming under a winter storm warning, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 counties in the southern part of the state under a blizzard warning. Just about all of Utah is under a winter storm warning. A few counties in Nevada. In California, the Sierra Nevadas. Okay, that's not breaking news, but the coastal range in northwestern California and on up through the state of Oregon, all under winter storm warnings there. I mean, it's just, and also let's not forget Arizona undergoing the same. High wind warnings, wind advisories. I mean, this is all, playing out there. We've got winter storm warnings now up for southern Minnesota, and I believe if the coloring should be correct, that these are winter storm watches that are up for the rest of South Dakota that's not under a warning. Also, northwestern Nebraska, we should say, is also under winter storm warnings. But we've got winter storm watches that go east across Wisconsin and into the lower peninsula of Michigan, as well as the UP of Michigan. So this is all going to wind up going to warnings. Nothing yet in the Northeast. That's we've got time for that to occur. But take a look at this snowfall forecast map. First off, this takes us through Thursday evening. So we've got some. It looks like a 6 to 10-inch snowfall for the Adirondacks and for Vermont and New Hampshire, and a little less Maine. You might have to tack on a few when this gets moved to another time period for Thursday night. But look at these numbers here in Wisconsin. Minneapolis, they've got a 24 up there in Minneapolis. So we're talking about 18 to 24 in this reddish band from easternmost South Dakota across the state of Wisconsin. Then further west, we take a look at what's going on there. Of course, these huge 30-inch amounts in some of the mountains in western Wyoming, but even the valleys here are going to do quite well with the half a foot to a foot in some places, extending down into Utah. And then you've got some blue streaks here. If you look around, there's LA. We'll let the map plot up. Of course, the word Los Angeles goes right over. Oh, no, I got rid of it. But you've got those 9 prints up there just to the northwest of Los Angeles, and even down through the mountains that go to the east of San Diego. So this is a pretty extensive no doubt that this is a really extensive storm, up to a couple of feet in the Sierra Nevadas. We'll move up the coast. It's rare that you see numbers, even an inch, being printed up right along the immediate coast of Oregon, because that coastal range, that wind comes in off the water almost automatically. So, and that water is cold by Atlantic standards, but not that cold. And there you see it even up into the state of Washington. Just a really impressive snowfall forecast map that's being indicated here. And by the way, WPC, you don't see this too often, but I decided to start off with the probability for at least 12, Joe, and 80 to 100% probability of at least 12 from eastern South Dakota across into Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's it looks like it's going to be pretty close to Minneapolis, St. Paul. So it looks like Gordy the weatherman is going to be busy these next couple of nights.
He is. And here are the probabilities for at least a foot elsewhere. You see it in Wyoming. You see it up in northern Utah, northwestern Montana, in the Cascades, in the Sierra Nevadas, and they even got a little dot there. I'm going to go back to the probability of at least 2 and let that load. There we go. I mean, look at just north and west of Los Angeles and San Diego. They've got a stripe there of 50 to 70% probability for at least 2. They even got the 0 to 5% touching the coast in a few places. It's just crazy.
I wonder if Jimmy Kimmel, who is the lone late night talk show host working out of Los Angeles, if he's going to mention any of this in the next day or two in his monologue. The fact that, we always see sometimes when it rains or when it's extremely hot, he's always mentioning something about the weather. Oh boy, it was hot out there today. Oh boy, it was rainy. Can you imagine if he tells everybody in the rest of the country, hey, you know what? We've actually had a little bit of snow here in the southern part of California. It is kind of strange.
Yeah.
And what a contrast to here we in the New York metropolitan area, we haven't been able to buy anything close to a flake all winter long, and now suddenly in Southern California, beyond the Sierra Nevadas, they are actually in line for seeing a little flaky weather there too. Believe it or not.
Yep. Leon Probitsky, the first hit of the Super Chat tip jar tonight. Thank you, Leon, and welcome to everybody on the chat board, and welcome to those of you watching the Joe and Joe Weather Show, lurking around in the background. You can subscribe by using your Gmail account, and then you can join the chat conversation if you'd like, or if you don't, you can always feel free to leave a comment on the video. And Joe and I are on here, the Joe and Joe Weather Show, Monday through Thursday, covering weather nationwide and sometimes in other parts of the globe. Monday through Thursday at 7:35, Sundays at 11 a.m. Fridays and Saturdays, Joe and I take a day off to recharge our batteries. But if there's a storm around and it's of consequence, then you can rest assured that we'll be at it. And just going to bring up WPC's liquid precip amount, especially just because of talking about where Southern California, several to many inches of rain being forecast for Southern California out of all of this. And you see how the max precip areas goes up into the Sierra Nevadas and also right along the immediate coast of Washington and Oregon down into northwestern California. You can also see the large precip max from Oklahoma northeast into the lower Great Lakes, and that max area of 1.5 inches of liquid that's in southern Minnesota through Wisconsin, which is going to be snow. In the northeast, it's about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, with some 1 to 1.5 inch pockets up in upstate New York. Much of this is all going to be from the weather system that is coming later on this week. Very impressive. I can't say it enough. It's very impressive.
Adam Lowe on the chat board says it looks like Seattle is going to get pummeled again with 6 inches or more of snow. The latest GFS bringing and I'm not sure if when he says the latest GFS, I'm not sure if he's making reference to the 12 or the 18. So you got to be careful when you're looking at that intermediate frog, the 18Z frog. But he's saying the latest GFS brings accumulating snow down to LA, yet New York City can't buy a flake.
Right. I'm just looking at Seattle's forecast. So Seattle itself is not under any kind of. There's winter storm warnings just to the east. For Seattle itself, there's a wind advisory up, but no winter storm warning. Although they do have snow in the forecast there um, for Wednesday and Wednesday night. Wednesday night, they have a 20% chance of snow, and then Wednesday during the day, they have a slight chance, 20% of rain or snow, with a high of 41 on Wednesday and a low on Thursday morning of 25, and a high temperature on Thursday of 36 with a low of 19 by Friday morning. That is cold for the folks in Seattle. So here's a satellite loop, and there's a little bit of an upper trough of some kind that's crossing Pennsylvania into western Pennsylvania right now. And I suppose that's what the GFS kind of and the European and the other models kind of magnify this little area of precip late tonight into tomorrow morning in parts of Connecticut, southern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, down to about Long Island and New York City. A few of these offices have snow in the forecast. It's hard to believe as warm as it was today in the 50s, but uh, sometimes it certainly could get cold enough aloft, I suppose, that you could get a few flakes out of this, but it shouldn't be much more. And out in the Northwest, you're starting to see the beginnings of this this system. What's really, the real standout to me is the fact that this isn't really as much about a developing deep storm. Okay, it's not like you've got a wrapped up 970 low out there. This is really more about, at least initially, it's more about the cold air to the north pushing down and creating this long fetch of easterly winds that are going to run from the western lakes all the way to the northwest coast. And that's cold Arctic air. I mean, that's real Arctic air. We see it, the beginnings of it now in on the surface map, where we've got temperatures that are dropping down into the single digits across North Dakota. It's still in the 20s in much of Montana, but then you go up into Canada, you start to see some of these temperatures that are, mostly single digits to around 10, and then you start to get into some below zero readings as you go further to the north. This is cold air. Look up here where you got this high, this 1030 high. I mean, you got temperatures here minus 20, minus 30 in a few places. So that cold air it's not going to all come down, but it's just going to kind of set up in a way where it just sort of bleeds its way southward through the west and down the west coast as well.
I tell you, Joe, it's really amazing and really hard if you're a winter weather lover and or somebody who would like. I mean, I know on my Facebook page, not a few people have really gotten just very bitter about the whole winter season here in the Northeast or here in the New York area so far. And this is to see what's happening out in the West, to see what's happening even out in the vicinity of Los Angeles, kind of like as a stake through the heart, so to speak. Although I still maintain that if we do see any kind of significant snowfall, it may just indeed wait until the end of March or maybe even the beginning of April, at a time when you don't expect it. Something has got to break. I know you said that already. It will break, but whether or not it breaks, in the immediate future, which is not likely, or even sometime down the road, still is a contentious issue
Yeah.
among forecasters.
Yeah, it is. I think going back to Dr. Cohen's quote about the fact that it makes for very big winners and very big losers, uh, with regards to how the winters seem to be playing out. You probably could use that argument and go back at least 20 some odd years to make that case. Um, so we have question here from Kathy Albano, who wants to know about Lower Michigan. I mean, it looks like, if you draw a line from Grand Rapids to Detroit, from there south, it's only about an inch or two. You probably have to go more halfway up the state and north when you start to get into the double-digit amounts there, particularly in the northern part of the state. And Josh hits super chat and asks the question. Uh, Joe, you could address this. He says, "Seems like I-90 has been a battleground for rain and snow for the past 2 years," which I think is correct. What are the chances just a little north of I-90 gets predominantly snow? And the on the forecast, the digital forecast, you go north of I-90, you've got, especially up in the Adirondacks, you got a foot plus there. So what do you think?
No, I think that the fact that the cold air is predominantly dense and tends to actually sink or ooze more southward. I think that places just north of I-90 have an excellent chance of picking up maybe a bit more snow than what is initially being forecast. And on the chat board, Leon Probitsky says that he was watching a climatologist on one of the New York news stations that said that southern New England and the mid-Atlantic states will get Carolina winters possibly. I'm not sure if Leon is
I heard that 20 years
suggesting.
ago. I'm still waiting, but go on.
I'm not sure if he's suggesting that that's going to be in evidence in the immediate future. I agree with what you say though, Joe, and the fact that if we had these kind of winters in the Northeast for the next 10 winters or 8 winters straight, yeah, then you would have something to say about the climate change and the change in the overall patterns. But I believe, and I think you do too, that there are lousy winters, and we've certainly got one to this year for all of the snow lovers. There are lousy winters, but there are also winters where you have more snow than you know what to do with. And I do believe that next winter or the following winter, we're going to go back to rather snowy weather pattern, and then all the people who are crying and saying it's all over, we're never going to have any good winters anymore, are going to say something completely different.
Yep. That pretty much sums it up. Radar tonight. There's some stuff on the radar to the north of you and moving into in western Connecticut. There's also some patchy precip in northeastern PA, and then there's a batch of some heavier precip in southwest PA into Ohio. That's all seeming to move to the east. We've got some snow up in the upper peninsula of Michigan and northeastern Minnesota. Not really related to what's going to be going on down the road in the next few days, but we are starting to see radars becoming busy across Montana, through Oregon, and over into Washington State as things start to set up in the west. And by the way, in the long range on WPC's forecast, in case you want to think that maybe they're going to be doing something here, here we go. This is for Thursday into Friday. You can see where the max areas are of the dark green is 30 to 50%. So those areas south and to the south of there and to the west will be seeing their frozen precip come to an end probably sometime Thursday morning. But it will continue Thursday afternoon to the northeast. So there we have in that red area is a 90% or higher probability for at least a few inches in northern New Hampshire and in western Maine. And then we go to, this is Thursday into Friday, we go to Friday into Saturday. We don't have anything. We go to Saturday into Sunday. We don't have anything. We go to Sunday into Monday. And we have a little bit of stuff that's showing up in Maine. So the forecast with the map we had yesterday that had snow down to southern New Jersey, we saw you can see what's happened with that. And just to go over in the west, see if they catch a breakout here in the west. So Thursday into Friday, it's all in it's all in California, Nevada, not too far from Las Vegas, by the way, and northwestern Arizona. Friday into that's Thursday into Friday. Friday into Saturday. Let me see. That's Thursday into Friday. This is Friday into Saturday. Then we got Saturday into Sunday, and there's still some snow going on down there. And Sunday into Monday. Looks like it's over. Well, just a little bit of patchy stuff left in Arizona and in New Mexico. So I looked at as much as I could look at today, and just came to the conclusion that not much is going to change. I don't know why. I don't know how far out in the long range you looked at this, Joe. But before we do that, here's that, what I was talking about here. Look at those isobars there. I mean, you have easterly winds from western New York. This is Wednesday night, Joe. Look at that fetch that starts from it basically goes all across southern Canada. I mean, that's crazy. That's a latitude, I don't even know how to quite describe it, but that is a really unusual setup.
And you don't see that too very often. But and look at it, look at all the I mean, look at all of the snow that stretches literally not coast to coast, mind you, but from the Continental Divide all the way across through the lower and middle Great Lakes, practically into the Ohio Valley and into northwestern Pennsylvania. That is a pretty long stretch of snow.
Yeah.
And I
And
guess that has
and
that
there's a
that's
and fairly low pressures down in, there's a 983 low near northeast of Las Vegas, and that sort of just kind of translates eastward. The gradient is so tight over Nebraska, South Dakota, back into northern Colorado. They're probably going to have to expand blizzard warnings and put them up for some more places. And then you also could see that the cold air is also forcing its way down. It doesn't often happen that you get cold air west of the Rockies from Canada, but it does happen from time to time where that cold Arctic air winds up getting pulled southward and pretty far south, and that's why you got all that blue that you see on the map on the GFS down in Southern California, and not that far from the coast either. I mean, look at that. That's Friday night. It's got that dark blue streak getting close to L.A. That'd be crazy if it winds up that they put down a couple of. It's not a. It has happened in the past where L.A. has gotten accumulating snow. Not very.
I think it's something like in the 1930s they
Yeah.
had that.
Yeah,
So
it's like every 40 years. I think they also, I want to say like 1979 or 1980. I think it happened to get also there where they got some accumulating snow. It's like every 30 or 40 years they get something. But the big question is, here's a little system for tonight into tomorrow morning. You see that little streak of blue there in Connecticut and Rhode Island, and even by you, Joe. It's got a little blue there tomorrow morning. That goes out. There's like another cold front that comes through tomorrow with a few showers. That goes out, and now you've got this east-west setup. And the question for Wednesday in terms of ice is going to be, because this is all cold air. Hold on, I'm just trying to get. There we go. So this is all cold air up here in Canada. So here's your fetch, and the question is, how much of this and how far south does the low-level cold air get? And I think you're right. I think it's probably going to be north and west of Philadelphia, north and west of New York City, and then interior southern New England, maybe north of 95 or 15. Let's use 95, but maybe the more important icing might occur, say, north of Route 84. And there's a warm front here, and this is one of those instances at a 1037 high analyzed there in Quebec. This warm front's going to try to push northward. It's going to have the fight of its life to try to get much further north than, say, southern New Jersey, southern Pennsylvania, when this is all said and done.
Yeah, they simply. I'm making a point in terms of warm fronts. Warm fronts have very little chance of making any kind of headway northward when they're bumping into such a large mass of cold, dense air. The best thing that the warm air could do is, again, rather than push the cold air away or off to the north, it instead rides up and over it and produces, again, widespread cloud cover and precipitation. And since we're dealing with a dome of rather shallow cold air, therein lies the possibility for, again, freezing precipitation, not necessarily snow, but sleet, ice, freezing rain, which is what we'll be looking at possibly in parts of the Hudson Valley and northwestern sections of New Jersey, for Wednesday night.
And this is the ice accretion forecast from the Weather Service. So going back to Josh's question, maybe it ends as some freezing rain or sleet north of I-90, but you get more snow than anything else. And you do have the Weather Service looks like it's forecasting you know, mostly amounts under a tenth of an inch, although it does have a quarter of an inch in the Catskills of ice accretion and into western Connecticut, western Massachusetts, and southern Vermont. Also, back over into north central PA and even into south central PA, well west of Harrisburg, though more like from Altoona up into northern West Virginia. And also some significant icing. And we shouldn't ignore the fact that there's probably going to be some icing issues on the southern edge of that snow shield. So in southernmost Wisconsin, including Milwaukee, looks like a tenth to two-tenths of ice accretion on the Michigan side. Going back to the lower Michigan question, icing might be a more important issue here, where we've got ice accretion as much as a half an inch being indicated in some places. And you can see the icing area also extends down across Iowa and into southeastern Nebraska, and maybe initially in parts of South Dakota before it goes over to all snow. The other thing, just because we don't often focus too much on this, but just want to take a look at these temperatures, and we'll let the temperature map load up. So you're going to be in there's an issue when you're looking at temperatures that are going to be in the single digits and below zero. This is for Wednesday, folks. These are all below zero highs across North Dakota and into northern South Dakota. And then you head down to the southeastern part of the United States, and what do you got? You've got mid to upper 70s. In North Carolina, you've got and South Carolina and southern Georgia, you've got low to mid 80s. You have 80s in Alabama, 80s in Mississippi, 80s in Louisiana, into Texas, 70s to near 80 up into Arkansas, 70s in Oklahoma. I mean, this is very warm air, mid to upper 70s up into Kentucky. And of course, the warm frontal problem on Thursday, as we mentioned, here's Thursday, where the warm air really tries to push northward. And Joe, I could see it where New York City, the forecast high for New York City Thursday is 45. The forecast high for Philadelphia is 70. The forecast for Washington, D.C. is 78. I certainly think that the areas to the south might wind up being too low. And you can see with the warm front not getting up there because you go up to the north and it's barely to 40 for you, and it's in the 30s, not too far north of you, where it doesn't get out of the 30s all day.
Albany is 35 on this map, and just a stone's throw to the north of Albany, what would that be? Glens Falls, 27?
Yeah.
27.
Yeah, you go further north, there's that 17.
That's got to be like Saranac Lake.
Could be. Could be, but
I mean,
the point is that it's cold air. That there is cold air up there, and it's gonna keep this warm front. That's gonna be people are gonna hear about that it got to 70 in Philadelphia or 70 even higher, and then New York City doesn't get out of the mid 40s. Not in the spring, not impossible. Happens many times.
And this is you mentioned this yesterday. Can you imagine if there was a significant or substantial snow cover across New England? You'd really have a pretty wild-looking map in terms of cold air damming, where you got sometimes you get those what I call the loopy doopy fronts, where you get something like 70, 75 or 70, 75 in Pittsburgh, and it kind of loops on down through South Jersey and then loops back up again. And even that coastal front sometimes brings temperatures up into the 60s, let's say along the coastline of Cape Cod. Really crazy stuff like that. But this is pretty impressive, considering that there isn't very much in the way of snow on the ground across at least southern and central New England and interior New York, for to still see this pretty wild stretch of temperatures from one extreme to another.
Yeah, I just moved the map over to the southwest into California. The highs Wednesday along the coast are in the 40s and low 50s for highs. That for them is pretty. That's pretty cold for them. You know, they were saying on the statements out there that your temperature is going to be running about 10 to 15 degrees below average. That's a pretty sizable departure for areas that, for the most part, have fairly stable weather most of the year.
Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Not much
indeed.
more to
No,
much more that you can add to that. I mean,
nope.
like, what are you going to say?
So we could say that the Wednesday system, when it comes out, runs up. The low itself runs up to the northeast into the lakes. Attempts to little wave develops on that warm front and goes out southeast of Cape Cod. So then we get rid of that, and weather conditions improve. There's a quick shot of colder air going into Saturday. Once again, the models are trying to, you know, keep one system in the north and another one producing some rain across from the Carolinas and southern Virginia back to the middle Mississippi Valley. Instead of hooking it up and bringing it up to the northeast, they kind of leave those separate. But then eventually a low does come out. And I don't know, Joe. It's got some kind of low here in western Pennsylvania come the Sunday evening. It's got a little bit of snow in the Hudson Valley in Connecticut. It's got rain everywhere else. And then suddenly there's a 987 low south of Nantucket with another streak of maybe I-90 snows Sunday night into Monday. Then that's followed on the models by another low that comes in right behind it. And this one has some heavier snows. It's got a 995 low in northern West Virginia, and suddenly you get a center that jumps to east of the Delaware coast, and it's got dark blue snow over you, and it's got ice over Long Island and northern New Jersey, and rain everywhere else. This is for next Tuesday. I don't know if I believe this. And then
It's
that goes out.
it's 8 days in advance, and you know that in 8 days, what we're looking at right now is going to be totally and completely different. So I'm not
Well,
even.
even before the 8 days, we don't even have to look that far. We don't even have to look that far. I'll just bring up the European from today, which is a whole totally different idea of what happens in the longer range, where obviously the Saturday's okay. You know, to get this system on Sunday, part of it goes to the north, part of it goes to the south, and then that goes away. The next low that the GFS wants to take into Western PA and move almost straight east on the European is a 977 low in northwestern Missouri that goes to the Great Lakes. I mean, it's got a 974 low here next Tuesday, where the GFS has got a low coming off the Jersey coast. And I tend to think that the GFS is probably not correct and that the European is probably more correct, because the European's idea, I guess, it matches up more with what's been going on this winter and with the overall pattern than what the GFS is trying to show, which I think would be an aberration to that pattern.
Yeah. Yep.
You know?
Yep. No, I mean, yes, you're right.
And the other thing is, if we look at the upper air, let me get this here. I mean, the GFS here, again, in the longer term, you're going to have some blocking that's going to develop over Greenland. All the models have it. You sort of see that on the upper center. But the problem is, the big problem here, Joe, is it's all fine and dandy to have that blocking high sitting between Iceland and Greenland. You could be dancing in the streets. It doesn't do you any good if you don't have some kind of vortex in eastern Canada to keep the heights from coming up. And what do you got here? You've got the southeast ridge that's still there. You've got the troughing that's still in the west. And this is blocking, but it's not the right kind of blocking. It gets it toward the very end of the period. At the very end of this forecast run, which is March 8th, by the way, it does look a bit colder. Okay, March 8th now. Again, as we said at the beginning, we're going to have to push this process along to the middle of March. You're going to be lucky if you get that one chance. If we get that one chance sometime in March, and maybe it's going to have to be in the second half, you will be very, very fortunate to see that happen.
I'm looking here at how the troughs are trying their level best to suppress or to weaken that ridge that has been almost perpetually, in place right across the southeastern states and on into the subtropical Atlantic. And that has been the key to why it's been so very warm or mild here in the eastern part of the country. That thing just doesn't want to go away. And I also notice now that we have, or are trying to see, at least on the maps, going all the way out to what the early part of March, March the 8th, we see that area near Greenland trying to build up, some kind of a block building up, but still, it's going to take a lot more than what you're seeing here to cause any cold air to really flow with any significance into the northeastern part of the United States, and also for any kind of troughiness to interact with that cold air to produce any kind of snow.
Yeah, you got to get the Pacific to change. All of this is all fine and dandy. If the Pacific doesn't change, you're only going to be in the same place you already are now, in my never to be humble opinion.
I see here that the executive producer just brought in a
breaking news bulletin.
A special weather statement. Special weather statement from the National Weather Service forecast office in New York. Light snow. There's no warning or advisory attached to this, but it just simply says at this statement, light snow expected late tonight into Tuesday morning. This would be for northern Fairfield, northern New Haven, northern Middlesex, northern New London, western Passaic, Orange, Putnam. Hey, I'm in this too. Rockland and northern Westchester. Generally less than an inch of snow is expected across the area, with localized amounts of 1 to 2 inches. Now, when they say localized amounts of 1 to 2 inches, that's a CYA forecast. And I'm not going to explain to you what CYA is, but they're saying in most places it's going to be less than an inch, but they're throwing in, for CYA purposes, 1 to 2 inches, just so that they can say if it does happen tomorrow morning, they say, well, we said it. We did note it, that it was possible.
We made it happen. Just our words alone.
We made it happen.
Right.
1 to
just
2 inches possible.
Our words alone have made it happen. Yes.
1 to 2 inches possible across the highest elevations late tonight into Tuesday morning. Most snow accumulations should be on grassy and elevated surfaces due to the initially warm ground temperature. There you go, Joe. We're talking about the temperatures of the pavement, temperatures of the ground. The high today was 59.
Yep.
So it's currently 50. But there is potential for untreated roads across the higher terrain and bridges and overpass to become snow-covered heading into the morning commute as air temperatures drop to around freezing. This could make for locally hazardous travel for the Tuesday morning commute. Snow will come to an end from west to east in the early to mid-morning. Thank you very much.
I would advise
statement.
I would advise those of you who really want to see snow stick, that you live in those areas, that you go outside while it's snowing and take an ice cube tray with you and put it on top of the warm ground, so that the snow will stick to the ice cube tray. Okay.
Odds, Joe. Tom Contino. Odds.
That's a Martha Stewart suggestion.
Yes. Odds are, according to Tom Contino, odds Joe Rayo will need the snowblower this week. Highly, highly doubtful, Tom Contino, Mr. Contino. In fact, you know what I should have done today? Maybe I could do it tomorrow, is just pull the snowblower out and start it up, because stupid here loaded it up, not completely with gas, maybe about a half a tank of gas back in early December. I think it was December 11th when we were expecting some snow. Only got about an inch. Didn't really need the snowblower. Snow melted off very quickly after sunrise that day. So, but I really should start it up just for the heck of it, now that we're into the middle part of latter part now of February.
And on that note, let's do a little Briller Jeopardy to wrap up this exciting Monday show here. So we're on this theme of the high temperature for the month of the average high temperature for these cities in the month of February. We will begin tonight with Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio, the average high temperature for the month of February.
Cleveland, Ohio. How about?
Oh, and wait. Before you say anything, Steve Lapointe pointing out that we've got 80 likes and approaching 300 viewers right now. So thank you. For those of you who've hit the like button, for those of you who are watching the show right now, if you like the show, hit the like button. Take us over 100. We'd love to go over 100. Now, Mr. Rayo, you were saying for Cleveland.
How about a 47-degree temperature?
For the average high for Cleveland, 47 for February? Is that what you just said? Did I hear
Yes,
that correctly?
I did. Okay. That's what I said. Yes.
So we have a couple of folks that hit it on the nose, actually one, and some runner-ups. Tom Contino, Helen Bertona, and Owen Danyo are the closest. Helen Bertona and Tom Contino are runners up, and David Carter just under that at 37. Owen Danyo at 39. 39, Joe, and Adam Lowe also getting it right. 39 is the correct answer for Cleveland, Ohio. Next is New Orleans. New Orleans. Mr. Rayo, what is the average February high temperature in New Orleans?
How about 55?
Double nickels. Double nickels, says Mr. Rayo. What does the chat board say? Tyler Fienga says 65. Steve Lapointe says 58. Timothy Veltman says 72. Johnny Quest says 68. Louis Alessi at 65. Tom Contino 64. David Carter at 60. John Sheridan, Joe, you went double nickels. You should have went boxcars. 66.
66.
66 is for New
today,
Orleans.
Aren't I?
Okay. Buffalo, New York. New York.
I don't see Buffalo being too much different than Cleveland. Maybe a little bit warmer by about a degree or two. So I'm going to say 41.
Mr. Rayo says 41. Timothy Veltman says 35. James H. says 30. Owen Daniel 35, Frank Riccio 37, Tom Contino 35, Chuck Cardillo 36, Lisa Rayo 48, so she doesn't get inside information clearly, and Helen Bertona hitting it on the nose. If you took boxcars and cut them in half, Joe, from 66, you'd have 33.
I can't believe that Buffalo is that cold. 33 in Buffalo for the average high now
for the month
in February.
Mm-hmm.
For February,
yeah.
And meanwhile, Cleveland, which is like a stone's throw away to the west and west northwest, 39. It says 6-degree difference.
I know.
That's amazing.
It is. And 2 3s in dice means. I just want to see if I can. 2 3s in dice, Joe, because we had boxcars, right?
Right.
2 3s in dice is called a hard 6. Okay, a hard 6. So we've had a hard 6. We've had boxcars and we've had double nickels on the show tonight. The next one is Charlotte, North Carolina. Come home to Carolina, the fluffy long grain rice.
Please.
Charlotte, North Carolina. Tyler Fienga, 58.
I'll say 57.
Oh my! Joe Rayo and joining James H. With 57, and Arthur Cotman at 57. And you know what and Steve Lapointe at 57. And you know what the answer is?
56.
57. No, very good. You hit it on the nose.
Heinz. It was a Heinz.
Yes. Heinz is what ketchup tastes like.
You want us to, if we weren't already at 100 likes, we're up to 104 now. But if you keep singing from the time that we start this show, we're never going to make it to 40.
Uh, Grand Rapids, Michigan is the final one tonight. Grand Rapids, Michigan.
How about for Grand Rapids? How about 32?
32, says Mr. Rayo. What does the chat board say? Mr. Rayo says 32. John Sheridan has 25. David Carter, 30. Jason Schaefer says 35. Chuck Cardillo, 24. Miss Fallerite, 36. Pat BFD, 38. Northern Grace hits it at 34 with Mark DeCara and Christina Pedia runners up at 33. And there you have it.
And there you go.
And there you go. And now
Lisa, my sister said 49. What? She's just pulling a number out of mid space here.
Well, she's trying.
No.
She's trying. So on that note, since we're now at 8:30, I think we should say goodnight. Because I'm tired. I'm going to bed early tonight.
I almost feel like that too. But anyway.
Yes, and tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York. And pretty soon, getting ready for spring. So should you. Make sure your home and go business looks terrific on the outside, perfectly landscaped. 631-756-1125. They have everything you need there, from mulch to topsoil to sand. Best prices in town. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com, ladies and gentlemen.
So you and I will be back tomorrow night at 7:35 Eastern Time.
Yes, indeed. By hook or by crook, we'll be here.
All right. We'll see everybody tomorrow. Night, everybody.
Au reservoir.